What's up, guys? My name's Splice Knight. Welcome back to Reflections, and today we're going to be talking about something that basically has got Google fucked up, and that is the idea of this moral quandary that they've gone through in firing somebody who basically, his whole idea in this letter that he just recently released was to ask for people to be hired to the company based on their merit as opposed to something that they biologically couldn't change, whether it be male or female or the color of their skin. Now, a lot of people are taking an issue with this, mainly due to specifically this idea that maybe this is going to take away from women or ethnic groups being hired, and I can see their concerns with that because the previous sort of established idea was that if there were no rules or regulations in place to specifically ensure the hiring of these individuals, then it actually makes it more likely for them not to be hired in the original sort of way that the world worked. That was kind of their mentality, and that is how everybody kind of saw things, and that's how it generally ended up being run because of that. Now, in the more modern era, where that's kind of a taboo thing to do, especially as a left-wing individual, we kind of run into this moral quandary on that. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. It's this idea of moral relativism, because this guy brings up a fantastic kind of point and argument. The idea that your stance in one area, left or right, shouldn't really affect your ability to get the job, and your capacity to be male or female getting the job should not change things either. I think a lot of what he was saying hinges more towards this idea of your gender, your ethnic background shouldn't matter, it should be based on your merit. That's a lot of what he was saying. He was saying that there are biological differences between the sexes, and that's really all he actually went into, to be honest with you. There's this biological difference between the two genders, and what this kind of thing ends up doing is, in the minds of Google from their head offices, they see this as a divisive quality, and what he was trying to, in the letter, actually point out is that basically, in order to make these positions more appealing so that women and people of different ethnic backgrounds will end up going for higher end positions, is to make it more accommodating to what they're more likely to be interested in. Now, that isn't to say, obviously, that all are like that. All females are not the same, all ethnic groups are not the same, all different people in those ethnic groups and gender roles, I guess, aren't the same. Obviously, all humans are very specific to who they are, and that's kind of part of moral relativism. This idea that your morals and your attitudes kind of are different between people because of the different environment and place that you grow up in, and it shades and differentiates you from the rest of the pack because of the behavior that you actually exhibit. Now, basically in this letter, what he's saying is that there are biological mechanisms that make certain positions more appealing to someone of a certain mentality, and he was basically advocating this idea, let's make these higher positions or these different positions more appealing for everybody of all different ideologies, and understanding the idea of bias. Now, bias is huge in moral relativity, because when you're relative to a certain area, you're heavily biased. And this is really demonstrable even in left versus right-wing individuals, in that if you're left-wing, you tend to have very strong feelings towards certain things, gay rights, women's rights being two of the major ones, the rights of ethnic groups, the rights of people who basically don't have a voice generally, or this idea that all speech condemning a certain group is considered hate speech, and that's kind of more in the extreme left, is that kind of idea of anything that can be construed as hate speech or derogatory or sex defamatory or sexist or slut shaming or whatever you want to call it. Basically, they're the ones who say that anything should be open while also kind of negating that whole idea by trying to police this whole concept. Then you have right-wing, and their absurd and more extremist views are a lot more prevalent, especially obviously in left-wing media, but also in right-wing media the bias is a little bit easier to see because it's more of a corporatist focus. It's also more focused on strengthening borders and divisionism, which for a lot of people can be an issue, but if you look at it from the stance that there are certain things that make sense in the right, there are certain things that make sense in the left, but to have your bias one way or the other is incredibly unhealthy. And a lot of what he was saying in his letter is we have to examine our biases, which is huge to garner a more morally balanced perspective. Because if you are leaning towards one way or the other, you're more likely to leave out people who might have a valid voice but don't necessarily lean the way that you normally would think. And unfortunately, when you have that bias, you close yourself off to the conversation. As Philip DeFranco himself often likes to say, if you aren't able to have a conversation, then you're not going to grow. You're only going to be stuck in what's called an echo chamber. And this is also another thing that was echoed in the same letter. I know, ironic that I'm using that word, but it is in fact echoed in the letter that if we don't have our beliefs and ideas challenged, and we have to have our ideals challenged on the daily to reaffirm our ideas, but also to make sure that we are on the morally just side. And again, obviously, with moral relativism, your morals can be relative depending on your grow up and your scenario and your social kind of climate. Depending on that, your actual morals can be drastically different. Great example of that is the morals of the Western society versus Eastern society like Asia, Japan, South Korea, and even North Korea. Those are all relative moral perspectives. And this particular letter actually is a fantastic opportunity to examine this idea that morally our relative perspectives need to be understood and realize that there are moral reasons for people on the left and the right to actually believe what they do and why they do it. Now obviously you don't have to agree with it, and that is the beauty of debate, is that you can challenge someone's ideas and say, well, okay, you might think this, but I think this, and this is my reasons why, and I understand why you think this, but I think that you need to reevaluate why you think this. But basically, guys, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, perspective is massive. And in this particular case, it feels like if I'm not on this guy's side, I feel weird. And again, that is probably my moral relative feeling on this particular subject. You might feel completely different. You probably do. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and if you want to see more videos, you know where to go. Hit that little notification bell thing, and you'll be notified of all my newest videos. If you guys enjoyed this, as I said before, share it with your friends, let everybody know, and yeah, I know this was like a weirder video. It's probably not going to be as heavily edited. Watch it be completely edited, I swear to God. But, yeah. So, what I've noticed is there's some interesting topics in the world that I want to kind of delve into and talk about the philosophy and occasionally maybe even psychology, because that'll be really fun to go into that, of different events and perspectives of individuals, why they might feel that way, the sociology of what's built up that sort of attitude, stuff like that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you later. Splice night out.